Hi, my name is Keith Cooper from Northlight Images. This video is about a new lens I've been testing. It is the Brightin Star 12mm f2.8. It's a manual focus lens. I've got some specs and various things about it. This is the RF mount version. It's available in E mount, Z mount, L mount, as well as RF. Manual focus, manual everything. So no EXIF, no focus data, no nothing like that. It is a purely manual lens. And a couple of months ago, Brightin Star contacted me and asked me if I'd like to have a look at it. Well, yes, and one of the reasons why I really wanted to look at it was because I've also got the Brightin Star 9mm RF mount. There's 9mm f5.6. It's smaller, as you'd expect, 5.6. But 9mm, very wide. I've done some a video about this, and in fact this lens is one of the reasons I've used this on some jobs. It is the widest rectilinear lens that I have. Now, yes, I use shift lenses and things like that for my architectural photography, but occasionally I want really wide angle, and I've used this on this camera here, the Canon R5, 45 megapixels, in preference to doing shots on my GFX 100S sometimes. Now, the 100S has its uses, such as big pictures like this, but the R5 is easy to use. I've used Canon gear for years, so I find it very easy to use. In fact, this particular one, I got second-hand from Park Cameras in the UK. Good place to check. Not one of the big second-hand sellers, but I'll give them a shout out because I've basically dealt with them for years, right since I started professional photography. Anyway, there's the R5, there's the lens. I'll have a look over. I've got the specs on another screen over here. I've got lots of sample photos going to run through as well. There are some on their website, but obviously they've been to far nicer places than I was able to go to. We've just been moving home. This is my temporary new office until I get a better place set up for that. But I've been taking this out and testing it, so I've got some pictures of good old Leicester at night and some of the streets where I used to live. And as I say, this particular one, let me just have a look at the specs. 15 elements, 11 groups, aperture range 2.8 to 16, 5 blade aperture. Now that does mean, and I'll show this, you get some, if you like stars, you'll get some nice stars on point images, certainly. I did a lot of the shooting at f8. In fact, almost all of the shooting I did here, apart from one shot I'll show at the end, was taken handheld using just the image stabilization. If you do use the image stabilization on this, you can see the front element protrudes but has a fixed lens hood here. A big 12 written on it in case you forget which lens you're using. But yeah, it's a nicely built lens, good coatings on it, reflections, I got no real problems there. But I say another one, 12 written on that, just in case you forget which lens you've got. Now, I used everything here handheld with image stabilization. Do set in your camera the focal length for the image stabilization, because it needs to know the focal length to do the correct movements of the sensor. So I've just set that to 12 for this, 9 when I was using that. Incidentally, my old house, which is in the process of being sold, I did all the house sale photos with this, the 9mm, and then cropped them, did them didn't use a shift lens or anything like that. I was able to make my old 1888 terraced house look like an aircraft hangar. In case you think that's a bit naughty doing that on the photos, second person to come around to look at it bought it. So yeah, thank you Brightin 9mm, you helped sell a house for me. But anyway, back to the 12mm. So nice smooth movement. The aperture is clicked. I don't know if there's a facility for unclicking it. I don't think there is. It isn't mentioned, but it's clicked. Half stop intervals for that. 2.8, you will notice now some of these shots you'll see some vignetting. Because I haven't got my test gear and things set up and that, I haven't got a detailed vignetting test. But yeah, it's quite strong. Certainly at 2.8 f4, it does diminish as you go up the apertures, but there is some vignetting, and you're going to get it with an ultra wide lens. So it's a nice one of that. Incidentally, I processed the images. I think these ones, the test images, I processed most of them in Adobe Camera Raw, and the vignetting adjustment slider was more than enough to give a general correction for this. Maybe somebody will make lens profiles available for it, but remember there is no EXIF data, so automatic lens correction is out. That's not something you're going to be able to do. So it's a nice lens. One feature, I'll just mention this before I go into the photos, is that whereas the 9mm here takes rear filters. Now I've got 3 filters here. I've got a skylight filter for nighttime shots, but I've got 2 neutral density filters, which are quite useful as well. I do need, for shots like this, I do sometimes want to blur people in things when I'm doing my architectural photography. Ones like this is sharp because I want the reflection off the water. I don't want it blurred or anything like that. I want a nice crisp sharp there. So you add a neutral density here because they're so wide you can't add filters on the front. The approach is slightly different with the 12mm in that, let me just take it off. The filter, there is a clear filter on it as it's shipped. So there is a rear element, effectively, of a glass filter. Now that's because the optical formula is such that putting a piece of glass at the back of the lens makes a difference. So you need a piece of glass, just a protective filter at the back in normal use. If you want to put one, and this particular one is a nighttime filter, it's an odd color mix. It just improves, gets rid of some street lighting pollution. I've not tested them in detail. I will have a look at it when I get a chance, but you have to take the clear filter off and put this filter on. It doesn't work, well, I mean it works, but it just won't work very well without a filter attached at all. So you do need the filter. This one here, the 9mm, the filter goes on at the back here, and the optical design is such, obviously, that it doesn't seem to affect it. You've got to, as I say, there's an ND10, an ND1000. I can't remember the detail. I'll have to check what they are for that. But a couple of ND filters that are useful ones there. But anyway, that is it. Handles nicely, weighs, excuse me a moment, weighs 550 grams or thereabouts. Obviously it'll change by mount or something like that. But anyway, that is it. Let's have a look at some images. Now, just down the street from where I used to live. Now this one here gives a nice view. I'm going to rattle through these because there's about 20 of them. They'll give you a feel for the lens and what I might use it for. Nice strong sharp lines. In looking at these images, chromatic aberration virtually missing. Yeah, there might be a fraction of a pixel or so. Detail good to the corners. Certainly if you stop down to f8, you don't even need to worry much about focusing for that, but we've got nice good sharp detail throughout it. There is a little bit of the vignetting showing through on here, but you don't mind, in general, a little bit of vignetting for stuff. In looking at sharpness of detail right through to the corners, I've got no problem with it. I might want to sharpen it a little bit if I was doing this as a big picture, but I'd probably take a lot more care in rather than just walking across the road and snapping a picture like this. So let's have a look. Just down the street, it gives the classic wide angle view. Now 12mm on full frame, that is wide. This one is excessive at 9mm, but when it works, when it's useful, it's useful. 12mm, very nice size on this. Takes a lot of goes sometimes with moving traffic like this. I just take several shots because you can't see it and judge the traffic necessarily. Take a load of shots and see which one comes out, which you like the composition of. I do nighttime shots as well, sometimes for architectural work, and I've got cars going by with lights on, and so you get the streaks of light. And I've always found that shoot half a dozen shots, one of them you may find just the car is in the right position compositionally, but that's for that. It's nice and contrasty. It's a sunny day. I haven't pointed it into the sun here yet, but it's generally fairly flare resistant, seems to have good coatings on it. Tilt the camera up, and this is why normally I will use a shift lens. because I use a shift lens so I can keep the camera level, shift the lens upwards, and that will keep the verticals true. But you don't necessarily always want that. Sometimes, I know that pictures that I do, architects like straight lines, like in this, but sometimes the marketing departments prefer something a bit more like this. So I always do a bit of a mix. In commercial photography, remember, it's what the client likes. If the client likes a particular style of image, then do it. They're paying you to do it. Don't get too precious about it. Looking here, this is the library. This is one of the old free libraries, and great looking building. Not entirely sure it's the view I'd normally take, apart from when I'm testing wide angle lenses, but it has a nice bit of impact on it. Keeping the camera level, we have some verticals in it, and even this. In these shots, there is a slight bit of distortion, a correction that you could make to it, but you're not going to notice it in pictures like this. I've got one that I took specifically to try and show a bit of the distortion, but that as much shows that I wasn't entirely level. That was shot handheld as well. Once again, camera level, wide angle. You can use lenses like this if you've got high resolution sensor and you don't need really high resolution pictures, such as the ones I was doing when I did the house sale. Shoot them with this 9mm and then crop to what you want. It's as good as having a shift lens, because remember, shift lenses, the lens is shifting, the sensor is just picking a different bit of the picture. Shift lenses are like having a very big picture and just clipping out a rectangle that fits what you want. But I've done lots of stuff on shift lenses and tilt as well. But anyway, that's it. There's the ducks down the river. 12mm is a good lens. Nice view across a bridge. In using shots like this, think carefully about everything that's in the frame. Slightest moving just the camera a few inches will change the perceived perspective of the bridge here and the relative composition. Now, I was just lucky because a bird happened to fly across it as well. There is an element of luck sometime in pictures like this. Now, I was heading into the city. This is the shot I said for showing a bit of distortion. Yes, it's actually, the camera's not quite level, but don't really care, because I say these are all handheld ones. If you want to be precise about it, such as when somebody's paying me, then I will use a tripod. But here we can see there's a slight bit of barrel distortion, and it is small. Unless you are photographing objects which really show the distortion, or test targets, which I'm sure, if you want that sort of stuff, I'm sure there will be reviews of this lens with sort of all the numbers and things like that. But we've got a bit of it, and it also shows the vignetting. This one's f4 if I remember rightly. Remember I said no EXIF data. So if knowing the aperture is important, get used to writing it down, noting it on your phone or whatever. But in general, that's fine. I've used lenses with far worse performance in this aspect, and it's sharp right the way through. Now, this is I was walking into town. I was going to a meeting with some architects, and here's where we were meeting, a pub, of course, and you can see from the lights the stars. Now, this is probably f8. I have to keep saying probably because it is what it is. But once again, handheld, making use of the fact that the R5 here works at high ISO very well. These particular images are just processed in Adobe Camera Raw. If I was doing many shots at at high ISO, I would probably use DxO Pure Raw to process the raw files, because its noise handling is excellent. But it's view of the pub garden, showing some nice sparkly lights. Now we'll see a bit more of the lighting, because this is when I came out of the meeting. We've got that light on the building which is showing very distinct stars. If you do not like stars like this, find yourself a lens with lots more aperture blades and a different design. Now the design of this is an interesting one because it uses, I believe, 2 aspheric elements to perform corrections, and it works very well. Looking down the street, this is down the high street in Leicester. Once I've got the parking lights here, so the access lights here for the raising bollards, and yeah, it's nice nighttime shot. Bit later, we picked up the detail in the sky. You'll see there's no real problem with vignetting here. I haven't had to adjust these much. There's 1 or 2 I have adjusted on it, but in general, it picks the lights. There's no flare. There's no, Here we go, another view. Looking into a restaurant by cinema. Yeah, this is great. Stuff like this is great for nighttime shots. I'm photographing these ones at night at f5.6, f8, and I've got masses of depth of field at 12mm, so I don't really need to worry about focusing. So they're just very, very nice looking images. So yeah, there's another one there looking along. The lighting, very easy to focus with this, but then that's going to depend what camera you've got. That's not really so much the lens. The lens itself just works nicely. Nighttime, one of the light sculptures that's on that. Now, people sometimes say, what is this, the actual work you do, the kind of architectural work? Well, I actually get asked to do photos like this sometimes for new developments. For this particular development, I've photographed a whole lot of the buildings. Now, this was done, as I say, properly with the GFX and with the Fuji 30mm tilt shift lens. Really nice looking stuff. I've produced a lot of shots for this that have been used for some planned remodeling of the site. So the images that I produced are used for visualization purposes and things like that. Hopefully once they've done it, they might even ask me back to go and take some more photos. But these are just general photos. Look, this is looking sort of over towards the west. So you've got the sky there. A little bit later, Nando's, a well-known restaurant chain, serves chicken, I believe. The lights, the stars. Now, as I say, do you mind the stars? I don't for this. You can reduce it. If you shoot at f2.8, you won't get stars, because remember, the stars are produced by the aperture blades. It's a 5-blade aperture. Take this down to f4 and the star spikes are less obvious, but they are still there. You need to go to f2.8. The full aperture to get rid of those spikes, like that diffraction spikes from the front, because there are no aperture blades visible then. So because it's where the blades meet that causes the diffraction spikes like that. This is one of the shots I took half a dozen here. This is one of those ones where I don't know what the exposure was on this. It might even tell me. No, it doesn't. That we've got a bit of blur. Take a stack of shots, get one where the composition works. That's one view of the cinema there. That's looking down one of the side streets. Another nice view of the cinema across the road. Just waiting out for the traffic to go. If you're going to do these, as I say, set up on a tripod, just take a load of pictures. Incidentally, I did a video a while ago in this area here about how the light changes after sunset, looking at how exposures change, how the effects, how the relative lighting. Now we've got still a nice dark blue bit of sky here, so that's working nicely. I see if I fish it out, and I put a link in the notes for it, which here is just a series of photos taken after sunset. Sort of at just before sunset, just after, and up to about 45 minutes after sunset, just to show how the light changes and how the look of scenes like this change. But if you're curious about it, go out and do it. That's the easiest way to handle that. Bit darker now. We've got one of the bridges here over the River Soar. This is, it works. I would say these are snapshots, but they give, I feel, a nice idea of how well the lens 12mm, what it is. This is not a lens you're going to use for portraits. Well, you might, but I can't say your subjects are going to be dreadfully flattered by the pictures of it. This is a lens that you need to go out and experiment with. Composition for things like this, and remember, you're seeing these photos and I picked the ones I like, and there were quite a lot more. Just slight movements of the camera, slight movements of your position can really change things. Very much so with this, the 12. When you're looking at something like the 9 here, it makes a lot of difference to that. Darker still. This is pushing it a bit now. This one I would definitely process with DxO Pure Raw. You're starting to see, I mean, I can see it just a little bit here, starting to see a bit of noise in things, but you know, it's a nice enough view. And there we go, night lit building. I do quite often get asked to go and photograph buildings at night. A restaurant on the way back, and as I say, this is just literally, I had a meeting in town with some architects, at a pub of course, went into town, come back, took some pictures, and I think it gives a nice feel for the 12mm. Now, one more shot. This was most definitely done with a tripod. This is where I live now. We've just moved in the last week or so, finally got a large garden. We're still a mile and a half perhaps, you know, just from the city centre of Leicester, whereas my old house was houses much more closely packed. No way could I get a view of the sky like this. This is using some special stacker software, and this is 16 4-second shots at, I think, 1600 ISO. Now, it was a clear night. This, you could just about see the Milky Way, and when I looked at the image, I could see M31, Andromeda Galaxy, and I spotted a small fuzzy smudge off to one side. Turned out the M33 Triangulum Galaxy. Now, if you wonder why I know this sort of stuff, I originally went to university to do astrophysics. I used to be really into astronomy. The last time I've tried any serious astrophotography was in 1976 or 75 or 76. Back in film days, when to get the sensitivity you would chill film and do all sorts of tricks like that. So for people who remember things like gas sensitization of film and other things like that, yeah, that was then. I've not done much since because I've not had anywhere. This is the view of the garden. This means I'm having a go at some more astro stuff, and if it works, then I'll include some in some of the videos and include it in some of my testing. But it's with looking at the stars, you've got a great view of what the aberrations are of the lens, and you can see, yes, it has a little bit of coma. This is stacked, so you know, it tends to even things out. This is to allow for the movement. But you know, I have to say, as somebody from back when I last tested sort of doing pictures like this many years ago, this is sort of astounding to be able to just set stuff up on an undriven tripod. Yeah, so it's a fixed mount. But anyway, that's it. So I'll do some more of those at some point. Just a quick mention of the specs. The MTF, as you can see, it looks pretty good out to the edges. The more detailed stuff, you can see it wobbles all over the place. Now, this is a 12mm lens. Of course, this looks reasonable. I also remember comparing MTF charts is a little bit like comparing car specifications before there was standardized testing. It depends what you want to show in them. So if you see a 12mm here, you can compare this with another lens, say from Brightin Star, because they'll be using the same testing methodologies. You cannot really use charts like this to compare with, say, a Nikon lens, Sony lens, or any other lens that's right, because there are different ways of doing it. But the interesting bit about it is it seems pretty good right the way out. At the corners, yeah, the edges, yeah, you'd expect a bit, but the fact that the lines diverge slightly and things like that suggests that the distortions do vary across the field. And the star images show, as I say, a little sort of bit of batwing coma, just a little bit, not much. I've seen much worse on wide angle lenses. I'm sure there are some examples, I believe, on the Brightin Star website of some astrophotos taken under better sky conditions, which look rather good. Specs. There's the internal structure. There's a lot of lenses inside this thing. That's a lot of lenses to fit inside that space. A lot of elements. Coatings, as I say, seem good. Anyway, any questions, please do let me know. Really nice lens to use. I will be testing it a bit more. I will see if I can use this filter at some point to see what effect that has. And likewise, I was only able to do some initial testing on this, the 9mm, and I want to return to this one to have a look at some of these other filters on this. So there you have it, Brightin Star 12mm f2.8. What can I say other than very nice lens? And just in case you forget, it says 12 on that. Thanks for watching. Bye.